Weights is like Liz Hurley and Bedazzled. Beautiful, has the capacity to give you the world. But for most, when they're using weights, they don't stand a chance in hell. Training for sprinting can be split into 4 major areas: sprints, drills, plyometrics, weights. Developed countries and cold countries tend to replace bits of these 3 with more weights. Choosing how you want to spend your time and exactly what you want to do in these different arenas is the individual tailoring when working out how to get faster. But let's start with the weights. Now, I may do a 100% historically accurate video of weights in sprinting, but this is not it. In this video, I'm trying to get over the principles, not the details. For as long as we've been chased, we've been able to sprint without weights. And people got faster without weights. Yeah, of course, sprinting itself is going to make you faster. Hills and drills, circuits and gymnastics. Come on, keep it coming. In the Cold War, from the 60s onwards, weights had 2 very different meanings though. During that period in the US, weights in sprinting was influenced by American football and then later bodybuilding. In Eastern Europe, it was directly tethered to Olympic weightlifting, where they dominated. And those influences informed exercise choices for the coaches. Now, if you're cool with this, can we leave the drugs for another day? The Eastern Bloc was using data that they were getting from their sports science departments on maximal strength training for Olympic lifting. They were beavering away trying to generate more explosive power. Let's focus the attention on compound movements, and they built their programs around the demanding neural drain of the weights that they were doing. Weights are a very powerful stimulus. Just think about it for a second. You can completely change how your body looks and how your hormones work with just a crude lump of weight. Look around your room right now, the other inanimate objects. Can they change your body and your hormones? But powerful stimuli require better recovery. The US was more based around sprinting with the weights as an afterthought. Mostly machines because, well, this was the exercise fashion, and that meant lower neural load. And in countries with good climates, the program was built around sprinting. The Soviet bloc whooped some arse in the 70s, while the US relied on an imported gene pool which showed natural talent in sprinting. Remember that definition of natural talent though from the first video? Then in the early 80s, Charlie Francis, a Canadian coach with a population of less than 10% of the US, started collecting together athletes from the same imported gene pool and started producing results that were better than his southern cousins. Come on. I'm going to say it again. Forget the drugs. Reports show that the US and the USSR were all playing on a level playing field. So how did this happen? He took the maximal strength and maximal speed training systems of the Eastern Bloc and applied it to his sprinters. In his cold country, he gave them the training that had worked in other cold countries. And then the Brits, shivering, followed the Canadians and invested their winters in the barbell. Eventually, the Americans felt the pseudo-freeze and hit this style of weights and regained their dominance in sprinting. But any stimulus is not for free. There's a cost, and I'm not talking legal or moral. I'm talking about imbalance and injury. You see, it all depends on how you look at weights. If you're using weights to increase your maximal strength and your exercise selection is compound movements, that's a massive neural drain in an event which already has a massive neural drain. Deadlift, squat, bench. You need to know exactly what you're buying. Because make no mistake, you're investing in them. Look, they make me stronger. What else is there to consider? 2 of the 3 are hip flexion, hip extension, bilateral. That gets you 40 to 50 meters down the track, tops. The other half of the 100 and 75% of the 200 meters is hip hyperextension. And these 2 are also posteriorly dominant exercises. They lean towards anterior tilted pelvis. Anterior pelvic tilt leads to tight short erector spinae, tight hamstrings, neural tension throughout the dura, tight calves, and tension on the Achilles. And that makes all these hotspots now even more susceptible to injury. Okay, now let's say you jump on board the cleans and snatches train. Again, while people can chat about triple extension from here to Glasgow, That's triple extension vertically. That helps with only 25 to 50% of the 100 to 200 meters. And that's only if you do them correctly. You're trying to go horizontally by hopping 35 to 45 degrees. Now, I love Olympic weightlifting, and Piros Dimas, he's an amazing example of it. He's unusual because he's actually more trap and back dominant in his technique. His goal, though, is to lift enough weight to win. So as long as he lifts it, it's irrelevant. He's found his way. But if you're looking to sprint, you ain't going anywhere using your back and traps. So you can spend your currency in the winters lifting more and more, but not get any faster, because you're using a technique that works fine in Olympic weightlifting, but doesn't transfer to sprinting. Now, I call this transference. Maybe others do, I don't know. But this transference issue is pretty much ignored and is replaced with train hard, lift heavier. Now, while compounds do put all this neural strain on you, and free weights allow you to use muscles that won't even help, are machines in isolation any better? Well, you know what? There are some arguments that it might be. Machines don't have the same neural drain, and sprinting is a core exercise. And so you could use machines to restore balance to areas that have been taken out of balance by the sprinting. But the issue is, fixed weight machines don't tend to ingrain the same motor patterns that you're using in the sport, and that is a problem. But don't despair, because I want to give you two examples that have bucked the trend. Alan Wells, a British sprinter in the early 80s from Scotland, a cold and wet place, if ever there was one. He took on a training style uniquely his own, focusing on speed of movement and resisted circuit training. He won the 100 meters in the Moscow Olympics and then beat all comers the next year. This is an example of a man filling in his alphabet with a unique tailored system to produce an undeniable result and an amazing career. I'm not saying run off and do speed bag. I'm saying he worked out or stumbled across what worked for him, and that leveled the playing field for him. My second example is the Jamaicans. Why have they come out of the shadows in recent years and have now started dominating? I think it's quite a lot to do with weights again, but I'm going to leave that for next time. Cliffhanger. Crafty. Thanks for all the comments. They do help steer the direction of this series, so keep them coming and share the video if you can. Obviously not with anyone you want to beat. I mean, keep it to yourself. And if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo! Woo!